The 1995 Mintex National Rally Series opened with the Sunseeker's Powerboats Winter Rally. With its mix of tarmac and loose surface stages, championship frontrunner David Galanders was forced to contend with some unusual rivals.
After the first tarmac section, we were 11 seconds behind the 2 metros, but we were leading forward. So they were taking a second a mile out of us on the tarmac section. So we had to go into this 21-mile forest and give it death. So we've done that, and now we're waiting to see what the times are. We think we've done enough, but now we're waiting to start the tarmac again. So, you know, we go back to chasing metros again. This restrictor problem, you know, on these new engines, it's definitely cut down the horsepower. I mean, they are very much slower, unfortunately.
In an effort to hold on to his title, reigning champion Chris Mellors had acquired the ex-Francois Delacour Escort. He was using the opening stages to acclimatise himself to the new car.
Started the morning expecting to get used to the car and be quite a way off the pace, but as it turns out, we're thereabouts. So I think we just keep at this pace and see how the day progresses.
A lively start to the event for Murray Grierson saw the Subaru driver dropping time on the opening stage around Bournemouth Winter Gardens when he was forced to select reverse to negotiate one of the chicanes. Brake failure was to see Steve Hill put the Mitsubishi in a ditch later in the rally after coming within 6 seconds of the lead. Although he and co-driver Stella Boyles were able to continue, a clash of heads during the incident left Steve with blurred vision for the rest of the event. 1991 champion Trevor Smith was back after a 2-year layoff. Despite the car being largely in Group N trim, he would finish in 6th place. 1 place ahead of him would be Brian Lyle, this despite the engine losing power in the closing stages. He was also learning to adapt his driving style to suit the demands of the new turbo restrictor.
I should have had a drive in the car before I went into the stages, because I can't believe the difference in power. We'll learn to drive the car properly and change up gear a lot quicker. So you're using the revs up to about 5,500, 6,000 revs instead of 7,500 as it used to be. So it's a learning curve.
A flamboyant Jeremy Eason was also trying to get to grips with the effects of the new restrictor, although that wouldn't stop him claiming Group N honours. Also trying to get to grips was Tim Ellis-Jones. In his case, with the move from Group N to Group A.
Star Championship back in that 19.
Still in Group N was Steve Petch, the Impreza driver, suffering a close encounter with the local wildlife.
On stage 6, would you believe, we had a deer come out and hit us, or we hit a deer. I mean, I would never have thought coming to Bournemouth that you'd ever come across a deer. So if you look at the front of the car, you'll be able to see the damage that it's caused. Obviously, it's split a radiator as well, so we lost a bit of time because of that, and we lost a deer, sadly. But at the end of the day, we've got to try and get everything back together now.
Tony Davis and Ryland James enjoyed the lead of the event briefly before fuel starvation problems intervened. They would eventually retire with a blown clutch. Steve Smith was learning about his new Lancia as he made his way to 9th place overall. Fuel pressure problems in the Sierra would result in road penalties for Roger Duckworth and Mark Broomfield, dropping them to 14th overall.
we see these cars coming.
Intermittent turbo problems in the more conventionally powered Sierra would see Mike Horn finish one place lower.
Cosworth, this is perhaps a Neil Dugan car.
A strong run by Neil Dugan saw the Escort move up to 5th place by the halfway stage in the rally.
Dropped a little bit of time in the forests with a small engine problem which we're going to resolve. But yeah, really enjoying it. It's good fun.
No mishaps today?
Believe it or not, no. haven't been off the road once.
But that wasn't to last. This harmless overshoot was followed by a heavy impact with a tree, leading to a fortunately brief trip to hospital for Neil and co-driver Chris Woods. Another immovable object brought Australian driver Lee Haynes' rally to an early end.
I was going to say when he gets into the forest, but it looks rather as though...
Also trying hard was Jerry Bailey. He was later slowed by water pump problems. Tony Jardine was destined to be sidelined with a broken track control arm, although he'd reappear to complete the afternoon stages. As the Sandy Forest stages saw the 6R4s of John Price and Tony Davis slip back, it was left to Chris Mellors to vie with David Galanders for the lead. As the Chesterfield driver got to grips with the new car, so he was able to match times with his Scottish rival. Galanders had originally said he wouldn't contest the Mintex series. His rivals must have been regretting his change of heart. Tim Ellis-Jones was gaining valuable experience in his new car as he made his way to 11th place overall. And despite that blurred vision, not to mention a raging headache, Steve Hill would go on to finish 4th. Marcus Dodd was competing on his first event in 12 months and was pleased to finish 2nd in class. Jeff Smith was plagued with a slipping clutch on his Escort for much of the day. He would finish in 19th place.
So it is, yes it is.
3rd place on one of his less favoured events went to Murray Grierson. But it was David Galanders who took the win by just 11 seconds from Chris Mellors, and he took an early lead in the championship race. From the most southerly event in the Mintex series, round 2 took competitors to their most northerly location, and the Anderson Cars Renault Granite City Rally. David Galanders had ambitions to make it 2 in a row.
Well, we're trying as hard as we possibly can, but Murray and I are just swapping second for second. I mean, the long clash, he only beat me by 1 second. I mean, you know, 17 miles in 1 second. I mean, it's tough.
How does the power of the two cars compare, the Subaru and the Escort?
Well, I think with this new restrictor system we've all fitted, horsepower now is down to 300 horsepower, irrespective of what engine, you know, so we're all round about the 300 horsepower now. So really there's no power advantage here.
In fact, Chris Mellors had done his best to spoil the local party by setting fastest time on the opening stage 1 second ahead of Galanders. But when he dropped 13 seconds to Grierson on the next stage, Mellors felt his Pirelli tyres were just a little too hard for the conditions, and a vibration in the X-Works Escort soon signalled problems with the rear diff. Mellors returned to the service area with a challenge for his crew.
The last 2 or 3 stages it's been getting noisier and noisier, and eventually in that last stage it sort of failed altogether. We just managed to get out of the stage and trying to sort it out now.
So what happened? You just put a new one in and you've got time and everything?
We haven't got a spare with us. Malcolm hasn't got a spare, so we're just going to try and repair the old one. Just having a look at it now.
So
that could be it.
Quite a tall order, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really. In about 10 minutes.
There were no such problems for Murray Grierson, just one overshot junction and a loose steering column casing, which had fallen around his ankles, an experience which he described as quite interesting at 100 miles an hour. But what of the battle with his rivals?
It's pretty quick. It's David and I, there's nothing between us really. It's a second here. He took a second off me there. We had one good stage where we took 9 off him. Chris Mellors, much the same.
By his own admission, Steve Hill was off the boil and unable to stay on terms with the front runners in his Mitsubishi. Matters weren't helped by a puncture on the second stage, which cost he and co-driver Stella Boyles 2.5 minutes. To make matters worse, they'd be plagued by electrical problems later in the day. They'd eventually finish in an uncharacteristically low 11th place.
They're going better now. We had a puncture in the long stage a mile after the start and decided to drive on it. Well, it was the right thing to do, but we dropped 2.5 minutes. So it's a question of catching up, trying to get a few points, really.
Trevor Smith won this event in 1991, but on this occasion he was complaining of handling problems with the Escort. Brian Lyle was using Michelin run-flat tyres on the flinty stages and was well on the pace despite the odd driver problem.
I think I just started in the wrong frame of mind, and it basically just got worse. So we were slow through there. I think perhaps maybe 6th, 7th fastest. But before that and after that, we've been, I think, in the top 3 or 4. So we're lying 4th just now. I've just had some good news. Chris Mellors has broken his diff. He's putting in a standard one, so hopefully it won't last. It's not very sporting, is it?
Reigning Scottish champion Mike Horn complained that his Sierra was too highly geared. But despite this, and the odd moment of over-exuberance, he'd finish in 7th place. Following a succession of problems, including a puncture and a drive shaft pulling out at the end of stage 8, Jeremy Eason was relieved to collect 2nd in class. And that was more than George Gauld would manage.
I think it would drive, it's all cosmetic, I think. The mechanicals would be fine, so it still drives and runs, so if we can get it out, we'll keep going. Obviously, it's a wee setback.
It took 10 minutes hard labour by the assembled spectators to get the car back on its wheels and the crew on their way. But despite all their efforts, Gauld and co-driver Roy Campbell would retire soon afterwards. Excessive tyre wear wouldn't prevent Roger Duckworth taking 6th place in the 2.9-litre Sierra. Meanwhile, Murray Grierson stepped up his pace in the second half of the rally to break the deadlock as he pulled away from David Galanders and Chris Mellors. Mellors' service crew had worked miracles, rebuilding his rear diff in record time to keep the car in the rally. He rewarded them with a late charge, snatching 2nd place with a blistering run through the final stage. With Mellors 13 seconds quicker than anyone else on that stage, David Galanders learned that he'd lost 2nd place by just 2 seconds. Despite a late spin which cost him 15 seconds, 4th place went to Brian Lyle ahead of Trevor Smith. Steve Smith had completed 2 stages with no breaks, but survived to take 10th place in the Lancia. While Jeremy Eason was celebrating his 2nd in class.
In 1993.
Round 3 saw competitors facing the unique challenge of Steer Daimler Puch Manx National, and Chris Mellors once again facing early difficulties.
We've had some problems. We thought it was a brake problem. It's actually a problem with the wheel bearing, which we think we've sorted now, so a bit more of a go this afternoon. The main problem is that the car won't handbrake around the tight bales, so we're losing a lot of time there.
Richard Moore wasted no time in demonstrating his expertise on tarmac with the ex-Colin McRae Impreza.
The first couple of stages, 3 stages today were a bit slippy, but after that it's dried out and we're going quite well, except for a little incident on the last stage where we hit a banking. But at the moment, by the looks of things, we're still doing the business.
Murray Grierson was doing his first all-tarmac event in the Legacy, an experience which wasn't improved by locking rear brakes.
It's quite a bit different from being in the forest, just trying to find out how sticky these tyres are, how much they'll hang on, where to brake, how to get around these bales. Yeah, it's a steep learning curve.
Steve Hill would have welcomed a few more brake horsepower in his Mitsubishi, although it looks quick enough in the car.
And right 2, and straight crest, into left 1, 50. Right 2, and left 1 over crest at sign. Into left one over crest, into left one. And right one tightens to right 2 by house, into left 9. And right 5.
So, safe past the house, but watch this hairpin and the innocent-looking stone wall.
Okay, watch her. And right 5, okay, repeat. And right
we had a major problem with the engine during the week. It's all to do with the restrictor and the engine management and actually getting it balanced right. And the car arrived, as you know, late last night, and we were out late last night trying to get it to work properly. And we still have misfire on the first 2 stages this morning, but now it seems to have cured it.
A hold radiator ended Trevor Smith's rally.
We started to get on the pace, and stage 4 we were 3rd quickest, and it really started to come together again. And then, unfortunately, on stage 6 there was a very slippery farmyard, and I think the farmer got all his cows and deliberately got them to do things all on the corner, and apparently everybody was going off there. And we went off and caught a great big concrete block, and it just holed the radiator. It didn't do any damage to the car other than that.
Steve Petch, meanwhile, was dominating Group N. Although his early braking problems had been solved, Chris Mellors was still forced to soldier on without a handbrake. Despite the lost time, Mellors was in 3rd place behind Richard Moore and Pete Doughty, and with Doughty not registered for the Mintex series, that was good news for his championship hopes. Moore, meanwhile, continued to dominate the event, and he was helped a little with nearest rival Pete Doughty suffering from a wheel bearing failure on the morning stages. Doughty won the event last year, but never looked like getting the better of Moore on this occasion to make it a double. Murray Grayson's tarmac learning curve is about to get steeper. And with that near miss out of the way, Grayson was able to make it to the finish to take 7th place, with the welcome prospect of a return to the forests for the next round. David Galanders has never pretended to like tarmac rallying, and he was happy to take 10th place and 16 important championship points. Steve Hill was still driving as hard as he could in an effort to make up for the effects of the turbo restrictor on his Mitsubishi.
And left 1. Into dip. Into left 1 over crest. And flat crest into right 1. Into flat crest. 50, up. Right 1 over crest, into right 1. 50. Left 1 over crest. And left 1 in big dip, straight crest. Into right 2, dip, right 2. Into straight crest and left 1. Into care, right 2 over crest, left 3. Into right 2, left 6. Into long right 4, tightens. Left 2, right 1. Into left 4, over crest. 50. Left 3.
Hill and co-driver Stella Boyles would finish 6th overall and 4th among the Mintex contenders. Despite needing a gearbox change, Brian Lyle claimed 8th place as he learned about the art of tarmac rallying. Meanwhile, a broken steering arm would deny Gary Leese and Roy Sweetman 6th place. With Richard Moore taking the win, it was Mellors who led the championship as they moved on to the forests of Wales for the Carriage National Rally and very different weather conditions. Those conditions would see Chris Mellors once again suffer an early setback on an event.
Had a good time on the first stage, we were quickest by a decent margin in there, and in the second stage, halfway through, just came down to a hairpin. It was particularly slippy, wouldn't quite slow down, and it was either hit a pile of logs or just go into a ditch. Went into a ditch which turned out to be fairly deep. We're just extracting it from there when Murray came round. He did the same thing. Unfortunately ran to the back of us and pushed us further in. So we're in there for about 5 or 6 minutes, which has really spoilt it today.
David Galanders was also in trouble early on, a puncture on the opening stage costing him over a minute. Although he and co-driver John Benny quickly moved back up to third place, they'd already abandoned hopes of victory and were going for championship points. Having pushed Mellors back into the ditch, Murray Grierson added insult to injury by setting fastest time on that stage, and he and Stuart Merry were leading the event, although it hadn't been without its problems.
Things have been pretty hectic this morning. Chris was off in the second stage, and we came along and slid in the same conditions as he did, and we actually hit the back of his car. So we broke the windows on both sides of the car. Just shortly after that, the power steering packed up, so we've had the remainder of that stage and the last stage with the power steering not working. But we've got it back together now, so hopefully things should go better.
Brian Lyle started the event suffering from flu. Unable to match the pace of the front runners, he soon decided to return to his sickbed. Steve Hill was another driver to hit early problems, a serious misfire slowing him badly on the opening stage.
And open hairpin left. And long right 6. This keeps coming round. Straightens up, then long open right 9. You got it. That's it. It's hardly out right 9. Okay.
Despite that spin, Hill and co-driver Stella Boyles had worked their way back up to 4th place when they headed for service after 3 stages. As they round the hairpin, they pass the ditched escort of Chris Mellors and Brian Goff.
And left 4, and long right 5, and left 4.
Trevor Smith had hit early fuel pressure problems, but there were no such difficulties for the 5th place Sierra of Roger Duckworth. Jeff Smith had had an early off in the opening half-run stage, but was fighting his way back up the leaderboard in his Group N escort. Co-driving Tony Jardine was the Sun's sports editor Steve McKinley on his first ever rally. They'd finish in 21st place despite an early off. Meanwhile, the rally was proving something of an alarming experience for Derek McGinnigal and Rupert Asbury. To add to his fuel feed problems, Trevor Smith had also lost a rear brake caliper, and the Burford driver was close to retirement. The man closest to leader Murray Grayson was John Roberts. Despite complaining of low turbo boost on the Sierra, the local driver was on the pace right from the start. Meanwhile, Steve Hill was busy negotiating some strategically placed log piles in Pantperthog, part of the Dovey Forest complex.
And right 2. Okay, left, sorry, right 1 into left 6. See here, and immediate right 8. And left 6, long, into right 6. And left 4, right 3, and left 3, into right 6, keeps tightening to 9. And left 3 into right 9. And left 8. Okay, 100.
With all his championship rivals hitting problems, Grayson's only threat seemed to be from John Roberts. And as the rally reached its closing stages, he'd built up a comfortable cushion over the Sierra. But on the penultimate stage, Steve Hill passes the parked Subaru, a stripped cam belt robbing Grayson of certain victory. There was further drama on the final stage, with Galanders starting at just 3 seconds ahead of Steve Hill. With 8 miles to go, the Escort suffered a puncture and he was forced to concede second place to Hill, despite the Mitsubishi running on 3 cylinders for most of the stage. Despite his early off, Chris Mellors would finish in 7th place to hold on to the championship lead. Fitting reward, in particular for co-driver Brian Goff, who'd endured a drafty rally with no glass on his side of the car. So it was a surprise but deserved win for John Roberts and Mark Lewis, the Blaenau Festiniog man backing off after he saw the sidelined car of Grayson. Also upholding local honours, John Bennett Evans with a strong 4th place in his Escort.
Seconds from Steve Hill, and as I said, comprehensively beating the competition on the first 3 stages.
Following a Welsh win, the championship stayed in the Principality for the 5th round, the Morgannwg Forest Rally. And we take a worm's eye view of the opening spectator stage, courtesy of Steve Hill.
And open right to left. Through hedges, then left into a hairpin right. That's a go.
Chris Mellors was hoping he could make a strong start to a rally for once as he defended his championship lead. Murray Grayson had now dropped to 4th place in the series and needed a strong result. David Galanders was making a steady start following a roll on his previous event in Scotland. Steve Hill was looking to build on his 3rd place in the championship, while David Llewellyn was using his local event to develop the new Corsa. Brian Lyle was looking to make his mark on the championship, while Trevor Smith was trying a little too hard to make his. With his car set up for the forests, Roger Duckworth was making a more cautious start. In the forests, Chris Mellor took advantage of running first on the road to take an early lead. The dry conditions meant that visibility would be a problem all day. Murray Grayson blamed the dust for no fewer than 3 spins on the opening forest stage. The 40 seconds he dropped as a result cost him the lead he'd taken on the opening pair of tarmac stages. David Galanders also moved ahead of Grayson, but he reported that he'd had to stop on 2 or 3 occasions in the dust and was 20 seconds adrift of Mellors. Steve Hill had solved the misfire problems which had troubled him on earlier events, but this time he was to be plagued with punctures. The Mitsubishi driver reported rocks the size of houses in the stages.
Left right. Left right into here.
Despite the power deficit, David Llewellyn was in 4th place after the tarmac stages and was full of praise for the handling of the car. But a broken gear selector, followed by a broken shock absorber, would spell retirement for Llewellyn and co-driver Ian Grindrod. Putting in a strong performance in the dust was Brian Lyle with co-driver John Benny. Despite the odd overshot junction, he quickly worked his way up to 4th place. Trevor Smith had recovered from his early spin to move within 4 seconds of Galanders, despite a loose fuse box preventing him from left foot braking on the opening forest stage. Following his cautious start, Roger Duckworth upped the pace in the forests, and despite a couple of early spins, he'd soon moved into 5th place. John Bennett-Evans was complaining of excessive tyre wear and seemed unable to reproduce the form he'd shown on the previous round. Brake problems caused a few heart-stopping moments for Steve Smith. Jeremy Eason looked to be heading for the Group N Championship title. While rival Steve Petch seemed to be doing his best to help him. Fellow Group N contender Jeff Smith was destined for retirement on the final stage of the rally. Philip Squires was one of a number of drivers reporting severe tyre wear, but that wouldn't prevent him taking a class win. Julian Reynolds and co-driver Paul Spooner put in another dominant performance in the Formula 2 category once David Llewellyn had departed the scene. A hole in the block of their Nova would end Martin Meadows and Ian Oakey's run. For Peter Thornton and Sean Kelly, it was a trip into the scenery which ended their day's sport. Paul Thomas and Steve Chetwin were another pairing not destined to make it back to Swansea. Murray Grayson, meanwhile, had stepped up his pace and was moving up the leaderboard. With 2/3 of the rally completed, he was back up to second place, albeit 40 seconds adrift of Chris Mellors. For David Galanders, the movement was in the opposite direction. Although he was unable to offer an explanation, he'd slipped down to 6th place. A succession of punctures had cost an unhappy Steve Hill dearly. He was now back in 7th place.
And left 4, 50, tight, right 9, almost a hairpin. And left 8. 50 to right 3. And 50 to right 3 into left 3. And long right 2. To left 8. It's open. And right 2. And bit 200. Slight bend right. And a long right 3 tightens to a 5. And tight left 5. Maybe nearly a 6. So about 400 again, maybe 500. To a slight bend right into a left 3. And 100 to a long left 3.
Brian Lyle's 4th place would soon become 2nd spot, courtesy of Trevor Smith's retirement and problems for the leader, Chris Mellors. A holed radiator saw some frantic work by the Escort service crew and cost him his position of 1st on the road. In the dust of the cars ahead of him, he left the road for 2 minutes, dropping him to 6th place and giving victory to Murray Grayson. Also suffering with the dust was John Bennett-Evans, although he was still able to claim 3rd in class. Group N honours went to Jeremy Eason as he finished 8th overall. It was a late victory then for Grayson, ahead of Brian Lyle and a recovering David Galanders. And it was Grayson who started the penultimate round, the Trackrod Forest Stages, as favourite to take the Mintex series. Rival David Galanders started the event in considerable pain due to a build-up of fluid in his leg, and there was a question mark over whether he'd be able to make it all the way to the finish. It was Chris Mellors who took the lead on the opening stage. The reigning champion still led the championship, but he was without a win all season. Now would be a good time to break the duck. And perhaps confuse the opposition over the right route to take. With his rivals forced to drop scores in the championship, Murray Grierson could clinch the title on this event, but he soon found himself struggling to stay on the pace. Steve Hill battled with a series of problems in the early stages of the event, including the return of that dreaded misfire. Brian Lyle had retired from last year's rally early on and was determined to do better this time. This was only the third championship round Richard Moore had contested in 1995, but he was still in 10th place in the series, courtesy of victory on the Manx National. Steve Smith complained of a lack of speed on the longer straights, but he was putting in another of his consistent performances in the series. On board around the Oliver's Mount motorcycle racetrack, and Smith is catching the badly smoking Sierra of Nigel Warswick.
Going slightly right to slightly left. Over the brown on slight left. Still going left. 200 hairpin right. Going slightly right uphill to hairpin left. 500, 400, 200 to hairpin left. Right and left. Going round slightly left now to go 90 right by the monument. Tightening right, tightening 90 right. Straight down here now. Slightly right.
Also being caught, Roger Duckworth by the escort of David Thompson. Thompson's in the borrowed Malcolm Wilson motorsport car while the team complete his new car. At the first service halt, David Galanders was still suffering with his leg.
The first stage, Mellors took a huge lump of time out of us. Obviously local knowledge and better car. No. I don't know actually. But in the forest, things have started to settle down a bit. The leg, the most important thing, is living. It's very painful, but it's okay. If you'd like to take a hold of it as we go along.
Managed to cope.
So far, so good. Yeah. This was the point we was going to retire. You know, we made our mind to come to here, and if it was that bad I couldn't function, it was retiring. But this moment in time...
Despite his lead, Chris Mellors also had his problems.
I think we've got about a 20-something second lead over David, and he's leading Murray, so that's not too bad. I've had terrible stomach cramps the last few stages, but it felt a bit better on the last one, so I don't know if it's something I've eaten, but I'm getting over it now.
Maybe
might be nerves.
Anxiety, do you
Possibly.
think? So things are looking good. So what are your plans now?
Long way to go yet. We just keep that sort of pace and see what everyone else does. I've been in this situation a few times this year and chucked it off, so I'm going to try and avoid doing that.
Murray Grierson wasn't too happy with his lot either.
How are things going out there, Murray?
Not too well. That last stage we had a straight on at the 90 left, went up a fire break, so lost a bit of time there. Apart from that, we're sort of there or thereabouts.
Is this one of your more favourite rallies?
It's not a rally I've ever won, and it's not a rally that I've had a lot of luck in. So, but I enjoy the stages. But as favourite, well, maybe not. No.
Steve Smith couldn't win the championship, but he had his own reasons to put in a good performance.
We feel a little bit at home. We only live 50 miles away, so we're, it's our home event. So it's good to do well at home.
What are your plans for the rest of the day then?
Oh, maximum attack still. We'd like to have a really good result. We've had some really good times earlier on in the year, but we've never been able to string them together. We've had one or two daft problems, so we're hoping for a good result today.
David Galanders continued to soldier on, hard on the heels of Johnny Milner and leader Chris Mellors. Mellors was determined to take that first win of the year, however, and picked up 4 fastest stage times. Making a rare appearance in the Mintex series was Johnny Milner in his Nissan Sunny GTIR. Fastest time on stage 5 saw Grierson up to 3rd place, but his rally ended abruptly on the very next stage when he rolled 100 feet down an embankment. Steve Hill was fighting back meanwhile after suffering overheating brakes and clutch failure in quick succession. Brian Lyle was on his way to a 4th place finish to follow up on his 2nd place on the Morgannwg. Richard Moore picked up a fastest stage time on the penultimate stage as he claimed 10th overall. Steve Smith maintained his 100% reliability record as he finished 5th overall, his best result on a national round. David Thompson was never out of the top 10 in an unfamiliar car, eventually claiming 9th place. Steve Petch took Group N honours following a day-long battle with Jeff Smith. A trip out in a hired car produced a top 20 placing for Brian Bell. Warren Philliskirk took 2nd in class as he got to grips with his newly acquired 6R4. And an eventful outing in his Mark I Escort resulted in a class win for Alistair Tuff, courtesy of a few spectators. Having rolled on the opening stage of last year's event, Mark Poland made it all the way to the finish this time. With 1 round of the championship to go, Chris Mellors couldn't have timed his win better. While Johnny Milner's efforts were rewarded with his best finish in the Nissan to date. As Chris Mellors opened the champagne, the pocket calculators confirmed that he, Grierson and Galanders would all return to Wales with a chance of taking the title. The final round, the Bulldog Security Products Midland Rally, would be a fitting climax to the Mintex series.
I think the tactics for all of us have to go fairly hard today, because, you know, each of us needs to win, and the three drivers all need a win. It's not, second place isn't good enough, so that'll be the tactics.
The important thing for me to win is to win the championship. If I don't win, then I don't win the championship. Second or third doesn't really matter.
It seems to be part of my career, you know. I mean, when we won the British Championship back in, whenever it was, 86, 87, it went to the last stage after a whole years of rallying. We just won the Scottish Championship, basically in the second last stage. So, hey, I love it, you know. It's talk about pressure. There's a lot of pressure here today.
It was Chris Mellors who set the fastest time on the opening 9-mile stage, Panperthog, 6 seconds ahead of Murray Grierson. But on the next stage, he was to suffer a puncture. A brake fluid leak would also produce a few anxious moments for the Chesterfield driver and his hard-working co-driver, Brian Goff. Murray Grierson moved up a gear on stage 3 as he recorded a time 18 seconds faster than Mellors over the 12 miles of Granite and took the lead of the rally. The Dalbeattie driver had disconnected the centre diff on the Subaru, with, he claimed, a resulting improvement in the handling of the car. David Galanders was in third place, ready to benefit from any mistakes by the leading duo. Having just won the Scottish title, the Aberdonian was threatening to retire if he could complete the double. Brian Lyle was, by his own admission, off the pace. He was also slowed on stage 3 when a log became wedged in the steering, leaving him with restricted lock. Steve Hill, meanwhile, was engaged in a close fight with Lyle. He was finding the Mitsubishi a handful on the twistier stages, and he picked up a puncture as well. Ewan Roberts put in a strong performance on his local stages until he was sidelined with a head gasket failure. Steve Smith complained that the bright autumn sun was making it difficult to see where he was going, but he was still destined to finish third overall and fifth in the championship. A strong run by John Bennett Evans was to be spoiled by a puncture on stage 4, which would cost him more than 5 minutes, ending hopes of a top 10 place and also winning the Welsh Championship. Dennis Tate would produce his best finish of the season, taking third in class. Drew Gallagher was on his way to 7th overall, with help from a few of his friends. Brian Bell was trying out his new Porsche, although it was no competition for the escort of Graham Evans. Jeff Smith was on his way to taking Class N honours on the rally to finish third in his class in the championship. And in car with Jeff, we see the end of Grierson's championship hopes as his car lies upside down at the side of the road.
Tightens down.
Meanwhile, Peter Stevenson decides to play to the cameras. With Grierson out of contention, only David Galanders can threaten Chris Mellor's championship hopes. That threat disappears along with a number of gears in Galander's Escort. Gearbox problems forcing him to settle for second place on the rally and in the championship. Another solid run for Steve Hill is rewarded with 4th overall in the rally and 3rd in the championship to lead the rest of the field home.
For the whole of the championship this year.
So it's a delighted Chris Mellors who makes it 2 wins in a row and retain his title in a championship that was in doubt all the way to the end. With Mellors taking the Mintex title, second place goes to David Galanders ahead of Steve Hill, Brian Lyle and Steve Smith, while Murray Grierson, who had 2 chances to win the series, finishes in 6th place.